Good morning, and welcome to the final installment of the series Getting Started with Cattle on Your Homestead. This is part 6, and today we'll be putting it all together. Please stick around till the end, and you'll see basically the annual costs of maintaining your animals, which we've covered the initial investment of the cattle. We've covered the costs of corrals, working pens, chutes, squeezes, head gates, all of your working equipment. We've also covered your veterinary needs as far as medications. That's not complete, of course, but it's just a basic guideline. I've also covered the vet equipment that you're going to need to administer those medications, whether that be a gun to apply the oral drench or the pour on medications, the syringes, etc. We've also covered your annual feed requirements for the animals. I'm going to throw in one more point on that to show you here, but that will all be thrown in at the very end as well so that you can see the final outcome per year, what you should have as far as requirements, your output, and also what your returns are going to be within each year annually, and if you become profitable or where you become profitable. That's all going to be at the end of the presentation. So please hang around till that so you can see what's finally available for you there. Quickly, I will first ask that if you've gotten anything out of this series or if you've enjoyed it, will you please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment? This has required a lot of time and research to ensure that everything is accurate and pretty much up to date with the costs that you're going to have. And if you would leave a comment or like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is cover a brief recap on your annual costs for your first year. You'll see that I've got two different scenarios. You'll see one side here, which is with pasture. So if you purchased a homestead and you've got enough available pasture to feed your animals for 5 months a year with your pasture, you're going to have a great significance of savings, which is going to ensure that you reach your bottom line, which is going to ensure that you repay your initial investment, and you're going to have a much higher annual percentage of quote profits than you will otherwise without pasture. You'll see that there's a huge amount of difference, even if you have to pay for pasture annually compared to not having any pasture and feeding year round with alfalfa or other good quality feed in your area. Okay, I'm going to cover the side with pasture first. We've covered all of these costs in the previous sections of the series, but I'm just going to give a brief recap of what those costs were in case you missed any of the others. And that way we can all kind of move forward together, whether you've seen the previous videos or not. Okay, I used the cost of 5 bred cows, and that was the numbers from that were from the November bred cow sale in Billings, Montana. So the overall cost of the 5 good young bred cows, and young, by young, I mean anywhere from 4 to 7 years old. Those are good, solid cows that have had calves before, so they're not going to be problematic heifers or anything like that. So they're just a good, solid cow that should be no problem for you for several years. So the cost of those 5 bred cows is going to be $12,175. Again, that's from the previous sale of November 24 from the bred cow sale in Billings, Montana. Additionally, we have the vet supplies or the meds supplied. This is given to us by what we use annually for our animals. Again, you're going to have to look to large animal vets in your area to determine what is best given to your animals in your area. Every area is going to have a little bit different needs. I cover the vet equipment to administer those medications. Again, that's going to include the the oral drench applicator that's going to give the applicator for the pour on. That's also going to be your syringes and that type of equipment to administer the medications. Here's where it's going to start to break down a little bit differently. If you have pasture, you're only going to be providing hay for 7 months of the year. Now, your area may have to produce, you may have to feed a little more, you may have to feed a little less, and that's all going to be determined on your area. This is what I used for my area. Right here, we can get about 5 months of pasture. Typically, there are areas that can feed much longer than that. So again, that's going to change depending on what you've got. So for 7 months of hay, in my area, paying $175 a ton, which is going to be a variable for you in your area. But for 7 months for our animals, that's going to come to $2,986. If you have pasture that you have to pay for, typically in my area, it's about $35 a head. So $35 a head for 5 cows for 5 months turns out to be $875. Now, if you have pasture that you can provide for your animals, that's going to be $875 that is in your pocket. That's going to be a savings, and that's going to save you quite a bit of money. If you're selling 4 calves, that's going to be over $200 a calf in returns. So it's a pretty significant amount. Your corrals and handling equipment, which I covered before, your cost is going to be $4,975. So if you have pasture, or if you have pasture to rent, your cost is going to be $21,452. I show the price with the $875 as though you rent the pasture for your animals for the year. So that's going to be $21,452. Now on this side, you're going to see this is without pasture. We're purchasing the same good young 5 bred cows for the same $12,175. Your veterinary meds are going to be the same of $240.97. Your vet equipment is going to be the same $200.28. But you'll see that your hay, still using the same $175 a ton, is going to be significantly higher at $5,118.72. Your corrals and handling equipment are also going to be the same, $4,975, for a total of $22,709.97. Again, this is an approximation, and these numbers are going to vary quite a bit depending on the equipment you get, the meds you buy, the where you can find the hay, and all of that. All of that said, you can see that there's a significant difference of literally $1,250 in savings if you're paying for pasture compared to having to feed year round. $1,200 over the price of 4 calves sold is going to be $300 a head. That's a significant difference. So if you can find pasture to rent or lease, that will help you tremendously. Again, if you have your own pasture, that's going to add an additional $200 savings for those calves, and you're looking at $500 a calf, over $500 a calf, basically, on returns of sales. So that's going to be a significant difference. If you have pasture, or if you can find pasture, I would highly recommend it. In my area, it's extremely difficult to find pasture. I got very lucky to find the pasture that I have. It saves me quite a bit of money overall. So if you can find pasture, I highly recommend it. Quickly, before I go to what we get back annually and what we're putting out annually, I do want to show you what we're looking at for feed, because you'll find that there's a little bit difference in the annual feed for animals as we go. And I want you to understand the difference and why there is a difference, at least for me, with the costs in feed. We covered bred cows requiring 2.5% of their body weight daily, For your 5 cows, that's going to be about 162 pounds, a little over, plus or minus. And annually, that's going to cost you the $5,118.75. What I'm doing, though, what I'm going to show is that once you've had that first set of calves, your cows are going to be bred back. So now not only are they feeding themselves and feeding the calf on the ground, they're also going to be bred back. So their requirements are going to be a little bit higher than they would if they were only feeding themselves, either pregnant or with the calf on the ground. Once they've had a calf, they're feeding themselves, they're feeding that calf, and once they're bred back, they're also feeding the additional fetus as well. So what I'm showing is that with that, you'll be feeding these bred mama cows with the calf. So the group of 5 will be getting 195 pounds a day rather than the 162, and your overall annual cost is going to be $6,142.50. You can see that's a little over $1,000 a year, but I wanted to explain that before I get to the final nuts and bolts, because there is going to be a slight difference. I do want to point out one last time before I go on that if you see that you're feeding 195 pounds a day to all of your animals, and you're finding that there is going to be leftover hay each day, they're not cleaning up that hay, then you can cut it back a little bit. Cut it back to 185, cut it back to 180, and try to find the balance point where you're feeding them enough that they're maintaining weight and doing well and cleaning up that hay, but they're not leaving anything left over. Now, if you go to 165 and you find that by 2 in the afternoon, they have cleaned that up and they're searching for more, or they're coming running to the truck when they see you, you're going to have to add back some of that hay so that they're getting enough, because you don't want to short the mama so that she's not able to maintain her weight, not able to produce enough milk. Her calves aren't gaining as much weight as they should be, or the fetus itself is struggling. You want to So here we're going to start covering the total costs and your expenses and returns that you're getting from your cows and calves each year. Your first year, I'm using the worst case scenario as if you don't have any pasture, you're having to feed year round. I'm also going to assume that you purchased your cows, your bred cows, at the November sale, or whatever is common for you for your annual bred cow sales. Around here, Billings, Montana, it was approximately November of 24. That's pretty common in our area. So with all of our equipment, the vet meds, the vet supplies, the corrals, the calves, and feed, everything for our first year is going to be that $22,709.97. Now, if you did purchase your cows in November, if they calved in March, if you weaned in September to October, now you should be able to sell those calves in November or December of that same first year. You should get a return of $6,580. Now, again, please note that that's keeping one calf for yourself. I used just the steer numbers for ease sakes, and I used $3.29 a pound at 500 pounds. 4 steers, 500 pounds each, or an average, at $3.29 a pound. Please note, this is going to change wildly, sometimes dramatically, each year. Right now, the futures indicate that there's lower numbers now than there have been in a very long time. That doesn't mean that our price is always going to stay at $3.29 a pound. This number may increase. It may also decrease. So please know that these numbers are always going to be an estimate. I got this number from the sale, I believe in November or December, again, for 500-pound steers from the sale in Billings, Montana, to give me that number. Again, it's going to change quite a bit, but I'm just going to use that number overall moving forward so that you have something that we can kind of get an average overall annually per year. So your first year expenses with the cows, corrals, hay, vet needs, everything else was going to be $22,709. Your sale of those cows is $6,580. So overall, after your expenses and your sales, you're going to have 16,129.97 of a net loss for that first year. And that's to be expected because you did put out a very large expense up front for your cows, your corrals, and everything else. So I think that a first year loss is to be expected. But I would say that with any business, if you go into a bakery business or a plumbing business or whatever it may be, you're going to have to pay rent for your business. You're going to have to purchase supplies. You're going to have to purchase equipment. You're going to have to pay payroll, and your business is just not going to be an instant success anywhere. So I think that anyone going into business should understand that your first year is going to be very difficult, and you're not going to show a net profit in your first year of any business. Okay, in our second year, we're going to have some different costs and some continued costs. This year, this is where we show the change in our feed output. Our expense of feed is going to change a little bit. So instead of 2.5% a year, we're feeding 3% daily for the cows. So our feed cost for this year is going to be $6,142.50. Each year, we're still going to have to purchase the medications for our animals. We've already purchased the equipment, and as long as that's maintained, you shouldn't have to continue to purchase equipment. So that's not there, but our medications are going to be the same of $240.97. You'll see that I am putting in some maintenance, repairs, and vet fees. You're going to have to replace some things. Each year, you're going to have to probably replace some fence. You're going to have to purchase some more barbed wire. You may have to purchase a gate. I also indicate vet fees. You may have to call out a vet to take care of an animal that's got cut on some barbed wire, injured a leg really bad, has a really good laceration, possibly has something like lump jaw or whatever. I've kind of lumped all of your maintenance, repairs, and vet fees into one annual fee. This may or may not hit you each year. Some years you won't have anything. Some years you'll have double this. I just indicate $500 for annual fees for repairs, maintenance, and vet fees, just to help you understand that these are going to be there each year. We're selling the calves again. We're going to keep one for ourselves, and we're going to sell the 4 same steers, quote, for that are going to be 500 pounds a piece at $3.29 a pound. So we're going to have that same $6,580. And now in our second year, we kept that one calf the first year. We let it grow another full year. So now it's got 2 years on it, 18 months to 2 years, depending on how you feed it out. Now we take that animal in to be butchered, and that animal is going to save you $3,500 in beef. So now, after we've fed our cows and calves, we've paid for the vet meds, we paid for our maintenance, repairs, and vet fees, we sold our 4 calves, we've got a return of $6,580, and our savings of $3,500 for the price of beef. Now we've got an annual return of $33,196.53. So actually for this year, with our savings, the primary savings is going to be that beef right there. With our savings, we saved almost $3,200 overall in our pocket, or in this case, being the second year, is going to be paying back your initial investment. So after that payment, you're going to still owe in our second year $12,933 on our initial investment. But you can see that we're going to start paying that back pretty quickly because of the returns that we're getting each year. Our third year is going to be very similar to year number 2. Now we've got a calf in the cycle every year. We're getting a beef in our freezer every year. and our costs are going to remain roughly the same each year. We're still going to have the same costs for our feed. We're still going to have the same costs for our meds. We're still going to have the same maintenance, repairs, and vet fees. We're still using the same numbers for the sale of our 4 calves. We're keeping the 1 calf back each year, so we're saving that $3,500. We're going to again have a return or a net profit of almost $3,200 again in our 3rd year. And you'll see that we still owe $9,736.37 of our initial investment. Our 4th year is going to be much the same. Everything is basically going to remain the same. We're still going to have the same feed costs. We're still going to have the same med costs. We're still going to have the same repair and vet fees, maintenance fees. We're still going to sell the same calves, 4 calves for $6,580. We're going to save $3,500 in beef costs, and we're going to have the same net return overall of about $3,200. One thing I do want to point out is that your cows by now are going to be somewhere between 8 and 10 years old, maybe 11 years old. So we need to start watching our cows. We need to start making sure that they are maintaining their weight properly. When you work your cows, you may take a look at their teeth. If you live in an area where there's a lot of sand and grit and they're eating forage that is very close to that sand and grit, they're going to be grinding their teeth down a lot each year, and that's going to become important. Now, if they've got plenty of grass, they're not eating it down to the sand or gravel, the grit, and that kind of thing. If your forage is just nice grass, you won't have to worry about their teeth so much. But there are many areas, I'll say maybe Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, these areas, there are areas with a lot of sand, and there may not be a lot of forage, so they may be using grinding their teeth on that grit and wearing those teeth down pretty quickly. So it's something that you're going to want to start watching as you work your animals each year. Even if you do it in just once a year at the, say, fall or spring or whatever, just take a look at those bottom teeth right there and see how their teeth look. Um, if they're starting to get short, you're going to need a close eye on them, because it's going to become more difficult for your animal to break down the forage that they're getting, and it's going to start weighing in on how much your animals weigh. You can see at the end of the year, on your 4th year, you've still got a profit, net profit overall, but you still owe approximately $6,500 on your initial investment. Please understand, a quick note, that I'm not showing any interest or payments, anything out of your initial investment. I'm just showing as though you had the cash up front to pay for these costs. There's no interest. Your 5th year is still going to be much the same. You're still going to have the same feed costs, med costs, maintenance, repairs, and vet fees. You're still selling your calves for the same price, and you're still saving the same amount of money on your um, beef that you eat each year. You'll see that we're now starting to get very close. By next year, we should be very close to paying off all of our initial investment with what we're getting in returns annually for our costs. Again, your cows, your initial investment, are going to start getting a little bit short in the tooth. You'll see that maybe some of them are starting to lose a little weight. They're not holding weight, maintaining weight. You just need to really keep a good eye on them. I would expect that you should, depending on the year that you depending on how old the cows were when you got them, they should still be a good, viable animal at this point. But just know that you need to start watching your animals. All right, here we are. This is where we call the break-even point. Finally, in our 6th year, we should break even. Now, you've been showing an annual profit, quote, net profit each year of the same $3,100 or almost $3,200 each year. But by now, at the end of your 6th year, you're not only showing a net profit, but we're going to say that you've broke even. You've paid off your initial investment. You have an annual net profit, and you should have roughly, approximately, a net return on your investment overall. Now, again, this is going to start becoming very important. You're going to have to really start watching your cows really closely at this point in time, because your animals are going to be anywhere from 10 to 13 years old. In the beef industry, most of the time they do not say that your animals will be viable beyond 4 to 6 calves. In my experience, getting good hay, getting good feed each year, making sure the animals are maintained properly, I've been able to get much higher reproduction from my cows than more than 6 years. I've been able to get anywhere from 6 to sometimes 10 calves out of a cow. Now, that's not always going to be the case. As I said, the industry typically uses 4 to 6 good calves out of a cow. So it's going to be important that you watch your animals. What is kind of normal for the beef industry is when you bring your cows in the fall, and you're going to wean your calves, you're going to vaccinate or give them pour-on oral drenches and everything else. Many times what we will do at that time in the fall is we'll have a vet come out and we'll have them preg test. We call it preg testing. And what they're doing is they're going to palpate to determine whether that cow has, quote, taken, meaning she has become pregnant, or if she is open, meaning that the cow did not take, the cow is not pregnant. It's important that you find this out at the end of the year, November, because if she did not take, if she is open, you have an animal now that you've fed for quite a while, and you're going to be feeding again until the following spring, at least, if you determine you're going to keep that animal and try again the following year. Now, if you take that chance and she does not get bred again, so she's been open since March or May, she's fed that calf, she's been open the entire time from November until November again. You've fed her for an entire year, and you're going to get nothing out of this animal. So it's extremely important that you pay close attention to your animals, you have them preg tested, and you make a good solid determination on what you think you're going to do with this animal come November. If you have one open that you feel is now maybe starting to lose weight, you check its teeth and its teeth are worn pretty significantly, I would highly recommend that you sell that animal. The chances of that animal taking again the following year are going to be dramatically reduced, and she may start losing more weight over time because she's not able to sustain herself with that animal. So it's important that you pay close attention to your animals as they start getting to this time frame. In your 7th year, I'm still showing that your animals are producing. Now, that may or may not be the case. So this may change depending on your animals, depending on your forage, depending on how old your animals were when you purchased them, etc. If you purchased 4-year-old cows and they've bred back and been productive every year, it's very possible that they can be productive again in their this year, which may be their 11th year. They may be 11 years old at this point. So this is going to be a very close year. They may or may not be productive. They may or may not be viable. But I use this year as still showing that, yes, your animals were productive this year. You still show a net profitability for the year, and you've now shown a profitability overall on your return of investment of $3,550 plus or minus. So here we are in our 8th year. In our 8th year, I show that you decided to sell your original cows. The reason I did that is because they're getting very old by this time. By the end of the 7th year, I'm expecting that they would be very old. Their teeth will have shown a lot of wear. They may not be sustaining weight like they should. Maybe they're not able to maintain good milk for their calves. Different things like that. So I think that this, at the end of your 7th year, you will have sold or swapped out the majority of your first initial investment, 5 cows. So I'm showing that our feed cost is still going to remain the same. Our vet costs are still going to remain the same, but I'm going to show the additional costs of purchasing 5 new cows that are anywhere between 4 and 7 years again at the same costs that you initially paid 8 years ago. This is going to change probably in 8 years. Who knows whether they're going to go up or down? I would expect they'll go up. But I'm still using the same numbers because we can never predict in the cattle market what's going to happen. I'm also showing the same maintenance and repair fees of the same $500. I'm going to show that you sold your cows, and because of their age, I'm going to show that you sold them as what are called the short term cows. Short term cows are cows that you'll purchase. You may get one good set of calves out of. So I showed a sale of, rather than selling your calves for that 12,000, they're going to be a short term cow, and you're going to sell your 5 cows at $8,875. I got this number from that same bred cow sale in November in Billings, Montana. There were short term bred cows for $8,875. It was an estimate based off weight, but there were a group of anywhere from 4 to 6, 10 bred short-term cows. So I used that average and came up with the sale price of $8,875. So you did sell and you didn't take a total loss. You purchased for higher, you sold for less, of course, but you were still able to sell your 4 calves, and you had your savings of $3,500 for your beef. So you still ended up with a net profit overall for the year, and you're still a net profit overall for your initial return on investment. So here we are in your 9th year. We're in a really good position now. You'll see that I've even turned this box green now, because each year you're showing that your feed costs are the same, vet costs are the same, maintenance and repairs and vet fees are still the same. You're still selling your calves, and your savings of your beef prices. You're still getting your net return of your $3,200, but now you've got a pretty significant amount of money on your return of investment. Now, this is just 5 cows. So this is actually a pretty significant amount of money that you're getting back annually as a net return, and on your return of investment. I would say that's a pretty significant amount for the 5 cows, um, overall, for what you're getting back. Again, this is you're literally selling 4 calves a year, and this is your return overall on your initial investment and everything. So I would call that a pretty good small business. Here we are in your 10th year. This is going to be the final year that I show. We still have really good young animals. Our cows are in really good shape. We're covering our feed, our meds again. We're still covering the maintenance, repairs, and vet fees. We're still selling the calves, getting the same return on our beef savings, and our total return on our investment after paying back $22,000 and your total savings now, you've got 10,800, almost $11,000. So if you look at this, you've paid back your initial investment of $23,000, basically 22,700 and some odd dollars, and you've not only paid all that back, but you've put back $10,000 into your pocket in your 10th year. So you've basically produced, out of 5 cows, produced about $33,000. I would say that's a pretty successful small business. Um, it's going to produce a hell of a lot more than, say, a lemonade stand or something like that. If you were starting a small bakery, or, as I said, any other small business that is going to be just you primarily. So that is where we would be after 10 years. Now, I do have some notes that I would say are pretty important. There are multiple variables that are going to have to be considered for you every year as time goes by. It's really important that you know this, and understand this going into the operation. The first thing you've got to know is that cattle prices swing wildly. Some years you'll get $1.40 a pound for a 500-pound steer. Sometimes you'll get $3.40 a pound for that same steer the following year. Cattle prices change dramatically over time, and there are a number of variables that are going to be involved in that. So it's important that you know that you're not going to get that same $3.29 a pound every single year. Now, the expectation and the experts say that prices are going to continue to go up, but we can't count on that, and you have to know that going in. Another thing that you need to understand, you are not always going to have 100% calving success. Everything I've shown you has been 100% calving success, and that's just not going to be possible. You're going to have a cow that is going to be lost in birthing. So this happens. Cows may, the calf may be breech, it may come out head first. There are a number of things that may happen to this animal, and you're not going to be able to maybe save the calf, or you're maybe not going to be able to save the cow, or you may not be able to save either the cow or calf. And you need to know that this is a possibility going in. You're not always going to have 100% success rate, and it's an important fact that you need to know and you need to understand. Or multiple things can happen to your animals. When this happens, you have veterinary costs that can be quite a bit more expensive really quickly. If you have an animal that is calving and having trouble calving and you've got to call a vet out, this can become expensive very, very quickly. I've shown an average of $500 overall for repairs, maintenance, and vet fees. Cows, like many large animals, can go many years without any injuries. And then one year you have cows that, for whatever reason, get pushed through a fence. You get open cuts on their chest, their legs, their lacerations all over. You may have to put one down for a broken leg. Who knows what can happen, but your losses can be significant. Vet fees can be significant, and you need to know that. One other loss that is possible, and much of this is going to be what I would call natural events, natural disasters, if you will. As strange as it may sound, you may get a really severe thunder and lightning storm, and a cow gets struck by lightning. It happens. It may not happen frequently, but it happens. You may have a relatively narrow irrigation ditch, and a cow may slip, fall in upside down, and literally drown in an irrigation ditch. These things happen. I wish I didn't have to tell you that these things happen, but believe me, I know that these things happen. There may be a fire. You can't get your animals out of there. This has happened a couple of times recently in Texas. One other thing I'm going to cover here that I didn't make a note of is feed. You're going to have different costs on feed. I used $175 a ton over that same 10 years. In my area, hay prices have gone from anywhere from $125 a ton up to $300 a ton, and they've returned back down to about $175 a ton right now. But your feed costs annually are going to fluctuate depending on drought, depending on fire, depending on what's happening in different parts of the country. But what we will encounter is there'll be droughts in Texas or Oklahoma, New Mexico, or other areas. And the droughts in those areas become so significant that large ranches in Texas will be purchasing hay in Wyoming for $300 a ton, and they will be paying semis to truck it to their area. So what happens is, due to droughts in Texas and those people being willing to pay $300 a ton, that means people in my area are now paying $300 a ton in our area. Another thing that you may not think of that is going to increase the prices of feed are going to be the price of diesel. Diesel affects us because the ranchers use this to turn their fields, to disc their fields, to plant their fields, to swath cut their alfalfa or their grass or their hay, to put their hay into windrows, to bale their hay. Diesel is used in every single phase of the operation for baling and getting good grass hay. Now, if diesel has gone up from $3 a gallon up to $5 a gallon, that's almost doubled the costs for the farmer to produce that hay. So that cost in diesel is going to be passed down to you as the consumer of the hay in your area. So diesel costs are going to affect your bottom line as well, even though they may seem really distant from each other. You know how, all right. This is going to be the end of the series. It may not seem like after 10 years you've made a lot of money, and I'll definitely point out that you're not going to get rich with 5 cows. You're not going to do it. Many ranchers in your area, they may tell you that you're never going to get rich with 500 cows. One of the biggest jokes in the area is that behind every quote successful rancher is a wife that works in town. You're not going to get rich with 5 cows. It will become profitable in your homestead, and I would say that it's it's one aspect of your homestead that you can look at on becoming profitable in the way of life of homesteading. Um, I wouldn't consider homesteading to be a primary source of revenue. I would say that it's a good way, it's a good quality of life. 5 cows is going to produce a small income. I would call this one source of revenue for your homestead. There are multiple different avenues of or sources of revenue for a homestead, and they're only limited by your imagination. If you get goats and sheep and chickens and ducks and multiple different animals, pigs, different things like that. You can come up with all kinds of different sources of revenue for your homestead, and thus making your homestead more profitable and creating the possibility of living strictly off of your homestead. You may create a petting zoo. You may grow spaghetti squash and pumpkins and watermelon and allow people to come out and cut their own watermelon or pumpkins in the fall or whatever. You may be able to do a corn maze. You may be able to sell off your eggs, whether it be chicken or duck eggs. There's numerous ideas that you can use or that you can come up with to create multiple different sources of revenue for your homestead. I don't want this to be a deterrent. I want it to be a positive overall, and my point of this whole thing was to show that you can become profitable over time with just 5 cows. Now, if you do 10 cows, you may be more profitable over that same 10 years. You may have more problems, you may not, but you may have better success with a few more cows. You may have more success with your 5 cows and 2 dairy cows. Don't let yourself be limited. Find different ways to create sources of revenue for yourself and your homestead. For me, bottom line, I'm not looking for profitability. What I am looking for is a way of life. I love working with the cows, working with my animals, and enjoy being out there and spending time with them. I also enjoy growing my own food. At the end of the day, the thing that makes me the happiest, that really satisfies my soul, is sitting down to a dinner with my wife, having a nice steak or a nice stew or a nice roast with beef that I've produced. I know the day the animal was born. I know the day it was weaned. I know everything that went into that animal. I raised it from the ground to my plate. It satisfies me to know that. It satisfies me to have a roast I'll use with onions and carrots and green beans, knowing that my hands were in the soil, planting the carrots, planting the onions, planting the green beans, um, making sure that they were fertilized properly, cared for properly, the animal has been cared for properly. Everything on my plate has been a production that I've been directly involved in from start to finish. It's been exceptionally rewarding for me, and It makes me happy, and more than anything, that is the reason I do what I'm doing. I'm not doing it to become profitable, although of course that's always beneficial, but it's less becoming profitable than it is the rewarding at the end of the day that makes me happy. I know this has been a long video, and I know that the series itself has been long. I've tried to go into some detail, but I did not cover every detail. I know for a fact, annually, I was not showing any price for a bull. You're going to have to figure out how to solve that for yourself, whether you purchase a bull, your neighbor's bull, put yours in with the neighbor's bull, whatever it comes to. I know that that's one of the things that I didn't cover. Um, there are multiple different variables and factors that can come into this. All of that said, I really hope that you've gotten something out of this video. I hope that you liked it. I hope that you've liked the series. If you did get anything out of it and you appreciate it, please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. If you can think of someone that you know that may be able to get something out of all of this, send this to them, share it with them, and I hope they enjoy as well. Lastly, I'll say if you want any of the information that I've created on this Excel spreadsheet or anything like that, let me know, shoot me a comment, and I'll either email it to you or I'll put it in the description below or anything else. So I hope you've got something out of this. I hope you enjoy, and I hope you get something. I hope you can use it in the future. Have a great day. Thank you very much.